were sleeping, we built or rebuilt or established or reestablished or created or became endowed or became a constitution, a finality on the role inherent, the government and the kind of governing structure associated a kind of non-impediment on a freedom related in actual justice. Fuck your society. This is not a running about, let me check your hyper personality. Let's get some jugglers in here. Have people wonder about things. Whatever. The rules of society, or I'm sorry, rules of civilization regard no Schadenfreude. The rules of society, fuck it. Your religious society and personal problems and that sort of thing. Regard no Antichrist. Kind of a capitalization, in a sense, on Schadenfreude, a benevolent echo, a condescending stature which doesn't actually exist. Fomentation of a kind of irregularity past the point of the ratio that it represents. While you were sleeping, exactly. The whole thing kind of hinged on a religious society sort of aspect. What is religion? We filtered everything out. In the process, it kind of became entangled with a kind of royal blood or royalty, or in some sense a quality, qualification, then a transposition to a quantification which was never justified, nor established, nor related, nor actual. Just some sort of postulation or posit or energetic wish, kind of for a destruction, a destructive measure, a collapse, a caving in, a non-actuality, a synthetic sort of steroidal sort of meaninglessness, which didn't pass beyond basically the basis of itself. And then in terms of the emergency that it was established, everything else got pushed to the side. It's not an emergency. There's really no such thing as a holy war, so the whole facilitation regarding the franchisement almost of such a thing don't care if you put money into it. Money doesn't really exist there. Um, that includes kind of who you're sucking off in the back room and that kind of thing. A series of black male and white male that never quite lines up, that never means anything, that doesn't result in any kind of memory, doesn't regard any kind of learning, doesn't enhance any sort of institution that we know or care about or recognize to any degree um, whatsoever. So, in this tiered um, sort of graphing, um, which is kind of a caste system which has fallen back in on itself and then relies thus on a kind of slavery which is totally inept and illegal. Just don't break the law and you get what you want. All these questions about manifestation, these qualifications, quantifications of a kind of a feeling, a backward sort of destiny, opposed to kind of natural motion, related zero displacement, any kind of physic, um, any kind of good, any generation, any I was going to say exposition, but sort of a exploration, I guess, would be more appropriate in the graphing. So there was a discussion in the kind of hierarchy of the realms of which we're talking about. And as it went, kind of if we take a sort of right angle sort of thing, ordinarily, and then place a sort of this, and then from this arm down, the non-hyper personality, and you're calling this some sort of survival or something, some sort of slave state, like it's meant to be degraded, like you're beyond eating, or some kind of relative combustion or dissociation. I guess in regards to some sort of pursuit of what you would deem some sort of actual religion that you feel that requires some sort of sacrifice in the physical form or the reality which is present in order to get to, and you kind of get there, and you understand basically nothing, kind of a status of a wasted high sort of thing, nothing developmental, more like a maintenance of some kind of lie associated, some sort of mystique, but not mystical, related some sort of impotent and oppressive religious fundamentalism. People go through the motions and dull the brain, don't feel anything, don't intuit anything, don't know anything, just do things from a roll the tape sort of standpoint for the sake of a thing and from the basis of a thing, neither of which they know, but yet continually reference and arrive to nothing, no conclusion, no sort of satori, no sort of realization, no sort of product, might be a way of saying it, which makes sense because it's not based on any sort of teaching, but rather some sort of meandering about the status of the self, kind of a within you, without you sort of thing, beyond your capacity or the legality associated the initial space of things that you control, and so you become more arrogant and angry as you pursue those things, arriving at some sort of dictatorial status, which might please the ego and the false sense of safety and the lie that is the mask, which you go to the higher realm to not retrieve and to not fertilize, but rather to retract and destroy, such that the self can remain in a merit and condition, resulting in a state and status of non-mistake, that is without sin, which if you're beyond yourself, you're already gambling on wasted time, borrowed money, which comes from nowhere, some sort of erratic, non-financed sort of thing, where you scramble to some disposition that you think has some sort of clarity or position or benefit to yourself. May or may not connect to yourself. It's just something that you're mumbling as you stumble from one instance to the next instance, totally disconnected from any sort of instant. And thus kind of immediately disqualify yourself, not only from constitutionality, but as such any sort of integrity or character or things of kind of that higher field that religion describes. So the hope was that all the religions were kind of in pursuit and describing the same thing, and it turns out that they were. And from the classification of basically a kind of comparison is what we ended up coming to, because we didn't really have anything else, because most religions go so far back. It's kind of a prehistoric sort of stringent. The words don't exist, is what history means. Nothing's been written, so to speak, some sort of unknown. Just because something isn't written doesn't mean that it's unknown or holy, by the way. You find something missing just because somebody didn't leave a ransom note doesn't mean your child isn't missing. Doesn't mean that it doesn't pertain some sort of history or reflect some sort of fact. A point A to point B in a three-dimensional space, and then this occurred over a series of time. And the time passed, and during that time a certain action was taken, and this action was either a crime or something legal, and in the instances referenced, the religions were given a bad name because the actions taken, kind of in the name thereof, were criminal. And this was backed up all the way to the case of jihad. It did not move. A crime is a crime, war is war. An action is an action. A equals A is where that ended up. One is one, God is God. So as we filtered these various logics that were available, not necessarily subscribing to or expecting some sort of difference, um, but rather looking for the positivity and the connection and the similarity rather than the conflict inherent, um, some sort of meaningless gesture which turns into a violence and a separation and a war, as it were, such that whenever one would run out of words, it's not that one attains some sort of holy state, but rather that one is declassifying the holy state to the point of some sort of detrimental psychology that totally nullifies basically the coordinates or coordination of a lot of the relative sort of discussions that occur between religions for the sake of more or less naturally furthering the condition, state, and stake of these various modes of seeing or various implementations of reflection, so that one can gain some sort of self-awareness for the purpose of not deceiving oneself, to not be bettered by something which doesn't exist, to not succumb to some sort of falsity, because as we find time and time again, the higher does not bow to the lower. Never has this been and never will this be. So, as we went through this cylindrical, as kind of as it turned out, this half-broken heart, naturally moving from one instant to the next instant, watching the self and the thought, and understanding the consciousness affecting the awareness, understanding how the brain has a choice, that there is a will, and this will is either in opposition to what is, or it is what is. And if it is what it is, it has to it some sort of vector, and this vector points to a kind of spirit. And this sort of spirit is the character, more or less, of what the point of the Constitution is, what we all pursue, what we convert into, what we understand, what we idolize, what we idealize, what we find as concrete, what we understand as happiness, or pursue as a heartbeat, or realize as love, some sort of connection from one isolate to the next thing. But there is no distance in that, and there is no charge for the action, there is no tax, and in every instance the reward is that the energy itself becomes itself, and that it is not necessarily the self which is financing this or providing this, but something higher and something beyond the mechanism of control of the self, and the rewiring and the disciplines and the notions, erroneous or not. There is a reality to such a thing. So as we find this sort of reality and we categorize these things that we understand as complete, we do away with the disliteral and the anti-interested and the boring and the cancer and the want that so many things advertise and distract us from. We do away with the distraction, we get rid of the destruction, the the faculty of some sort of relationship behooving something that isn't present, something unspoken, something material, something drastic and violent and segregated and placed. So we did this entire systematic of filtering. What we found out